Hi, my name is Clara. I am the co founder of List Perfectly, and today I bring you another amazing reseller that I want to introduce you, Stewart White, creator of Franklin Hill Ventures. With much further ado, welcome, Stewart. How are you?
Hey, doing well, Clara. Long time no see, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, and thank you for coming over and visiting us in the store. Would you be so kind to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Sure, as mentioned, my name's Stewart, and I live here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and a full-time reseller. Been reselling for really as long as I can remember. I'm sure we'll get into more of the details of that. Uh, just became a first-time grandfather exactly a year ago because I was in Houston this last weekend to celebrate my grandson's first birthday. So just getting home from that, it was a
Right.
wonderful weekend and definitely helps set your priorities in order once you have a grandchild.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations on that. I think I saw the pictures on Facebook and it was very, very nice. It's and obviously are they in also in Tennessee?
No, they are in Houston. They live just north of Houston and Springs, so too far. We're trying to get them back over here to the real South sometime, but
Well,
we
I'm
were
sure
glad to.
you're gonna be successful.
Yeah, we were glad to get to spend some time with them. And of course, it's a lot easier in today's world of technology because of FaceTime and, all the videos and stuff that you can do.
Right.
Probably different than 15 years ago when you had to mail pictures back and for, just look at pictures and no video. So,
Right? So I just want to give some highlights about Stuart. He's a longtime collector. He sells vintage treasures. He runs booths in multiple antique malls. He's active across multiple marketplaces. He's co-host of Finder Flippers Reseller podcast. Also, he's an incredible, loyal, and early adopter. Congratulations, Stuart. I think you're close to your 5-year anniversary with LP.
I think that's right. I think I started in 2020 or either 2020 or 2021. So,
We have you with 2020. You're going to come to your 5 years anniversary. So, congratulations. So, Stuart, let's get into the origins of you being a reseller. So, how did you get into collecting and reselling?
well, on the collecting side of things, I've collected my whole life back going when I was a kid. I collected everything from stamps to postcards to baseball cards, football, basketball, all the sports cards. I even collected things like sugar packets. Uh, you know, I know that sounds silly, but back then the world was a little different. You had more than
Oh
just
yeah,
the pink, blue, and
yes,
yellow sugar packets. You had presidents, you had birds, you had all kind of things on sugar packets,
yes.
and so anytime we'd travel, I'd pick those up. And yeah, so really, almost, you know, bordering on hoarder, but
Mhm.
I did collect a lot of different things. And as far as the reselling part of it, really probably in junior high school, I think it was junior high school, may have even been elementary school. Um, I would help my mom bake brownies, and then I would take those to school and sell them. And then as I got older, there was a little
Oh, you're a
convenience store.
hustler from young.
Oh, I was. So,
Oh,
and as I got older and I would catch the bus, there was a little convenience store next to the bus stop, and I would go in there and buy blow pops, for however much they cost, and then sell them when I got to school. So I've been doing it really as long as I can remember. I'm 58 now, so probably 50 years worth of reselling.
oh, that's incredible, Stuart. We have a very similar. You and I were very similar on that because I also had to sell, was lollipops in my case in order to be able to go on a trip with my class. So that is, I totally understand what is to sell in high school or school or anything, and make a profit. That's incredible, Stuart. So what would you say? When you started, and when did you start to resell online?
Well, our eBay account says it was opened in 1999, I believe. So it would have been around that time, but really I have more Amy to thank for Amy's my wife.
Hi,
And
big hug to Amy.
yeah, 30 wife of 32 years, I think it is this year. So
She's
got our
amazing.
anniversary coming up here in about a week. So
Oh my,
um,
congratulations, early anniversary, Stuart. That's incredible. And your wife, Amy, is so amazing. She's such a sweetheart.
thank you. Yeah, so anyway, she set up the eBay account first, and I think, and of course this is, your memory starts to go as you get older, but I think that she was selling some of the kids' clothes
Right,
online. Like it would have been mostly like infant, newborn type stuff at that time because our oldest daughter would have been 2 in 1998.
right,
Um, so and then as far as when I started first selling on eBay, it's hard to even remember what the first thing I sold. I do remember, when Amy was selling the clothes, I mean, it was a lot different than it is now. I don't even know that you had to upload pictures. You could just put a description and, of course, then the whole getting paid was a lot different back then
oh,
as well too. Um, but I probably started seriously selling on eBay sometime in the 2000s, and it would have just been stuff that I picked up from yard sales. I've got two brothers, and we've always been competitive, and we probably all started selling on eBay about the same time, and
uh,
we would always go to yard sales and then see
right.
who could sell their stuff for the most. But it was definitely just a hobby at that time. I mean, most of my focus was on family during all those years. We had four kids, all doing sports of
Oh,
one sort of another, traveling all over the southeast with that. So
and that, I think that's one of the things that allows you, reselling, allows you to be very flexible, maybe go full time, then go like a little less, and then increase and decrease your production, and your work on it. So that's incredible, Stuart, because you're mentioning that you gave a lot of time to your family. When did you start to sell exclusively? Was it back then? When did you become like a full-time seller? I'm just curious.
well, as far as full time, so I did leave out one step. I guess my
Uh,
first foray into like serious reselling of any sort would have been right after I graduated from college in 19. I graduated in 90, and then in 91, my roommate at the time in Nashville and I set up a sports card booth at a flea market, a weekly flea market. So,
right.
um, every weekend we were out there hustling sports cards. And I did that I think we did it for about a year maybe. And then, to be honest, it burnt me out on sports cards so bad that I sold every one I owned when he closed it down. And now I kind of regret it, but I never really got back into sports cards after that, to any
Right.
great degree. Um, but as far as, when I then got more serious with the reselling. So, as I mentioned, I was probably doing eBay, and I was probably doing some eBay at the same time Amy was doing the clothes. But really, in the 2000s is when I would just start listing stuff that I would find wherever, mostly yard sales at the time, because I don't really remember going into thrift shops that often. And then once the kids got,
Uh,
I guess, a little older, probably in the 2010s, sometime maybe like 2013, 2014, is
right.
when I had started doing well enough on eBay, even just doing it kind of in the free time that I had. I thought,
Right.
I might can make some extra money doing this. So that's when I started treating it more like a business. I mean, got serious, so to speak, about it. And I was still just an eBay only person. Never really did any cross listing back then, even manually, because there were obviously no tools in 2014 to help you do it. Um, and I started doing well enough that I think I did start maybe probably in the late 2010s, started doing some, it wasn't really cross posting, but started listing on some other platforms. But I
Right.
was always one of those, if I listed on eBay, I'm not putting it on Etsy, because I was always like
Reselling.
afraid somebody might see it, and if the price wasn't exactly the same, which
Right.
I've learned is kind of silly, because for the most part, eBay buyers are eBay buyers, and Etsy and Macari buyers are Macari buyers. So the
It's right.
chances, and there's so many millions of things out there, the chances of anybody seeing them, or even if
Yep.
they did, who really cares? Um, so I started like using some other platforms, and I think it was only eBay and Etsy and maybe Facebook Marketplace
Oh
local
yeah.
stuff at
Right.
first.
Oh yeah.
Um, and
That.
then to make a long story short, by the time the 2020s rolled around,
Uh-huh.
um, you know, I felt, because I'd always wanted to go full time. I mean, I think that's the dream of every reseller, probably, is
Right.
to go full time at some point. And actually, I had my youngest brother had been a full time reseller for
Yeah.
about 5 or 6 years. I mean, he got big enough where he built a warehouse and was
Oh,
doing mostly media, video games, movies,
oh, great
excuse
category.
me, and then vintage clothing.
Yep.
Um, Probably, and one of the mistakes he'll probably tell you that he made is he did not diversify enough.
Oh
So
yeah.
he was buying a lot of stuff. I don't know if you remember, and they may still be around, but liquidation.com, which was,
Oh,
different
how could I
companies'
forget?
returns. And he was buying like every media lot that came up, which,
Ah,
um, so it was almost all video games. I mean, he had one of the video game resurfacers that he could, clean them and resurface them. And,
right.
um, but then I think what happened is that all these like bin stores and other bargain stores started opening. And I
Uh-huh.
think that they started buying up all those things that used to go to
Yeah.
liquidation.com. And all of a sudden, there were no media lots anymore. You could get electronic
Oh,
lots, and there might be a few video games or DVDs in it, but he didn't want to sell electronics. So, really, his whole distribution or
oh,
his whole sourcing, outlet dried up.
uh,
And, so he ended up,
that's tough.
just
That's
kind of slowly dropping off. And he still sells on eBay and to this day and does pretty well, but he ended up, going back into the corporate world, so to speak. And, but he enjoyed, he was doing full-time reselling during his kids' kind of, developmental years. So he was home, and so he's glad he did it. But he does have a real job again now. So I waited a little bit longer than he did.
right.
And, um, I've always been fairly diversified in what I sell. It's almost all under
Yep.
the vintage and antique umbrella,
Yes, you are.
but it's not a sourcing outlet that's really going to dry up per se.
Yep.
So I think in
Mm,
2021, it was around August, is when I
right.
actually like left the corporate IT world and went full time reselling, which happened to coincide with about 2 months before the Boss Reseller Remix, the first one, which I think
No
is where I first met
way.
met you and Amanda. So.
Yes, that's the first time. Yes, we met in person many, many times. That I didn't know this about you, Stuart. We talked so many times, but I think, or maybe you told me I forgot because I forgot that you have your day job until 2021. Wow, that's intense. Congratulations, Stuart. So how is this? How was that transition going from, doing that for a living, like you said, a real job, right? And then we transitioned to have our reselling business where we're doing everything, a solo entrepreneur, if you please. But you have, of course, Amy. But but how was that transition for you?
I mean, it was fairly smooth. I mean, I had done a lot of planning as far as, trying to make sure that I had enough saved for retirement before I left the job, and then tried to save enough to have some money to help with the transition between. And then with Amy still being in the corporate world, that took care of the insurance, which is probably one of the biggest pain points of anybody wanting to go full time. It's a lot better now than it was probably five
Yes,
years ago, because there's so
it
many
was
more
bad.
options out on the marketplace.
Yep.
And not that the insurance is still what you would consider probably A plus insurance that you get through the marketplace. It's not an F like it used to be. I know when
Yes.
my brother was doing full time reselling, he basically said he paid a whole lot of money for basically catastrophic type
Yes.
insurance, and that's all that was
Catastrophic.
available at the time. So,
That was
so I do
exactly.
think,
Mm-hmm.
and people do ask me,
Uh,
uh, what are your suggestions for going full time? And I
right.
know, and really, it's to make sure that you have some sort of whether it's money saved or a plan to make extra money, because as you know, the reselling income can be a lot like this rather than if you have a real job where you know what you got coming in every month. So,
Right.
you got to make sure you have an outlet to get insurance, and you've got to make sure that, you've planned for retirement, or at least you're going to make enough reselling to plan for retirement. Because, I mean,
Mhm.
the good thing with reselling is that it is the kind of thing, I
Yeah.
mean, I enjoy it, and I think most people who resell do enjoy it. So
Hmm.
you can keep doing it as long as you're healthy, your whole life. And so you can always have some sort of income, hopefully coming in. Um, but,
Right.
I know when you're young, a lot of times, and, you don't necessarily think about when you're my age. And,
Yep.
uh, so I think it is important to at least have something in the back of your mind that, what am I going to make enough with this reselling, not to just live paycheck to paycheck, so to speak, but to
Yeah.
be able to actually save for a time in my life, when I want to quote retire. So,
Right. No, very well said, Stuart, because that's the earlier you start to be, and like you said, contingency funds, or right, for whether it's going to be retirement, whether it's for the family, sometimes it's for medical expenses or anything. I think that having those contingency funds are key for success for us as resellers. Now, let me ask you a question. Okay, let's remind me, how many marketplaces, because I know at one point I think you were in 6 platforms. How many marketplaces are you now?
all right, let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head. So you've got eBay, which is still, my
Uh,
number one source of like revenue.
right,
And I mean, it's still the, 500-pound gorilla in the reselling world. Then Etsy would be the second one, and it's probably my second most revenue as well. And
nice.
then at this point, I would say Facebook Marketplace is my third biggest, and that's a combination of both local pickup and shipping.
Uh,
Um, so, and then Poshmark and Macari, I'd say Poshmark's four. I do occasionally sell. It's just the type of stuff that I sell is not necessarily this type of stuff that most people sell on Poshmark. I don't do really any clothes to speak of. It's all vintage and antique hard goods. And then Macari, I'm lucky if I make, kind of, every once in a while I'll make like 3 or 4 sales in a week, and I think, oh, Macari's coming on, and then I'll go another 3 weeks without making a sale. But then
yeah,
I also sell knickknacks, which is the Crazy Lamp Lady District Marketplace,
nice.
and I do okay on there. I don't do live selling on that platform. I just
Right,
do their marketplace. Um, and it's kind of a manual process. I mean, we can get into my processes later, but I
right,
do use List Perfectly to track it, but it doesn't have a direct link right now. So I just
right.
do copy and pasting, and that's one I have to manually delist on. And then I do live selling on Whatnot, and also list in their marketplace as well. And that's similar to
Nice.
District or Knickknacks in that it's mostly a manual process, but both those are very simple listing flows, so they don't add a lot of time to the overall listing process. I mean, the main things I've just got to delist manually, and I have submitted an enhancement request for Whatnot and for Districts. So
Yes.
hopefully they'll hook with those at some point. Uh,
Yes, absolutely. Always, we're always adding features, adding channels on List Perfectly. So certainly, we are aware that the need of Whatnot and District are great platforms. I'm curious, do they have like a spreadsheet upload? Have you tried
they
uploading
they
them?
do, but the way my listing flow, I just really list at the time that I list the item on the other platforms. That works best for me.
Right.
I think building the spreadsheet would probably take us much time. I know you can export, but then you got to deal with the picture. I mean,
No,
it's just
our
easier for me to
spreadsheets,
manually
they
do
come
it.
with images, Stuart. They come with images already. When you download the spreadsheets from LP, the smart spreadsheets already have the image, all the up to 30 images, Stuart. So you
All
don't
right.
even have
Well,
to do that manually. It's
maybe
just
I'll revisit it. It's. I mean,
okay. I'm
I
gonna do a
do.
demo for you. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a demo, and I'm looking forward because I can assure you, it's faster than cut and paste. But certainly, building the integration of Whatnot is something that we're looking forward in LP.
Okay. Fair enough. And yeah, I'll definitely revisit that. Yeah, I try to stay flexible, so I'll definitely look at using a spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And so definitely it's a great strategy to diversify, like you said, not only with different marketplaces, but like you do with sourcing as well. That's amazing. So in the what about your booth? So you're also selling in person, Stuart. What about that?
Yeah, so I got my first booth probably 8 years ago now. Hard to believe it's been that long, but I think it was around 8 years ago. And my first booth was in a little town north of Knoxville called Clinton. And I'm
Oh,
at Granny's Attic Antiques there and still there in that location till the present day. And I
yeah.
started out there. The way I got in there, I used to go pre-COVID when there were a lot of in-person auctions, which, most, I don't know about other cities, but here in Knoxville, there's very few in-person auctions left. Once COVID hit and they were forced to go online, they quickly discovered that less overhead, more eyes on your stuff equals more money for them. So most of them did not go back to in-person live auction selling, which made it a little more of a challenge to find value in auctions. But I'd
Right.
still do pretty well, finding some value in online auctions with local pickup. But I definitely miss the in-person auction days because you could get some really, really good bargains when your only competition was the other people in the room. So now
Right.
your competition's the internet. So, um,
Yes.
but anyway,
Yeah.
going back to the story,
Yeah.
a lady came up to me after the auction one night and she
Yeah.
said, "Hey, she said, I've seen you here a couple of times and see the kind of stuff you buy. I think you'd really do well at the
Uh-huh.
antique mall where I have a booth." And so she gave me the name of it. And Amy and I went down there that weekend or on Saturday. I guess the auction was on a Friday night. Went down there on Saturday and they happened to have a half a booth available. I said, we'll take it, we'll try it, see how it goes. And so we got this little half a booth, and I mean, you almost had to turn sideways to
Yes.
walk in.
Yes.
Um, but it just so happened that the person next to us, and I'll never forget, they sold these. They were like glass liquor bottles that they had like cut and made things. I mean, nobody ever in the month I was there. I don't know that I ever saw anything change in the booth. But in any case, they left, and we took that
Yeah.
half a booth, so we had a whole booth. And so we had a whole booth for a couple of months, and then we started doing really well, and then another booth opened, so we went ahead and rented the booth next to it. So we ended up with two booths, and
Wow.
then eventually, and the other thing with antique malls, and I could talk all day about antique mall strategies and what helps you do well, but obviously location within the antique mall can be very important.
So true.
So I mean, we were in a decent location, but it happened the people right in the front of the store opened, which was a four booth location. And I'd asked Kat, the manager, I said, "Hey, if that ever opens up, I'd like to be on the waiting list." And I guess by the time it opened up, I was the only one left, or I was at the top. So I got to move to the very front of the store, had
That's
four booths, like right when you walk in the front door.
huh.
And so we've had four booths there. We've actually moved locations up the street, but we still have the store's a little smaller, so we kind of everybody got downsized. We have the equivalent of two booths now, but we actually do better in the new location than we did in the old, just because I feel the way the mall traffic's laid out and the way people are directed through the booths.
Yes.
So, um, but in any case, so about what has it been? About 6 years ago, we thought, it'd be nice to have a booth in the Knoxville location or the Knoxville area too, because Clinton's
Right.
about 30 minutes north of Knoxville. But it's very much a touristy town. And if you ever Google like top antique
Yeah.
destinations in the US, Clinton comes
Oh,
up as a top
really?
10 usually. So we're fortunate here in Knoxville. We have a lot of tourist traffic. So that helps with booths.
That's incredible. And I'm seeing here in your link tree in Instagram, you're in Bearding Antique Mall, Granny's Attic Antiques, and West End Antiques.
Yep. And the Bearden was the second one. That's the one we got in probably about 6 years ago. And then West End's the most recent one, and we've been there now for about 3 years. And I always talk about how important relationships are in reselling. And like the West End Antiques, they happen to be
Yeah.
managed by two sisters. Uh,
Um,
one sister manages Bearden, and then the other one manages West End. And
Oh,
The sister at Bearden told the sister at West End, hey, if you have a booth open up, you should really see if you can work it where you can get Stewart in there because he does really well at our mall. And so I ended up getting a booth there. And
oh, that's
and
incredible.
and I recently, last probably about 3 weeks ago, I put in an application at another antique mall to get a fourth location. So I don't know if I'll get it because they all have waiting lists, and um,
Right.
but it's kind of in the same area as Bearden and West End, so it will not really take much time travel wise to get to it. But I
Yeah.
just feel I've got enough stuff now that I could support a fourth location. So.
Nice. Congratulations. So I'm curious, Stuart, how with so many, you're in person, you are online, all right, you're making podcasts, you're doing so many things. How does a typical day looks for you?
Um, well, I get up and usually package first thing. So, whatever I've sold the day before,
Shipping.
which unfortunately these last couple of weeks seem to have not been as many things going out. It's been kind of slow. I know it's just that time of year. I know if I look back on the spreadsheet I use to really track my business, June for the last 7 years has historically been the slowest month every year. So
Right,
not unexpected, but hopefully it'll start cranking back up as we get closer to school starting again.
right.
Um, and then I spend the rest of the day. It's just kind of a combination. I don't really have like a hard and fast schedule that I
Uh,
follow. It's just kind of whatever happens to strike me to do that day. But in any given day, I always try to spend some amount of time listing. And
right,
then a couple of times a week, I'll go to the two Knoxville booth locations just to either take stuff or just move stuff from, point A to point B, because that
right,
can help stuff sell as much as taking new stuff out there.
right.
And then then I go out to Clinton about once a week. And um, then I spend some time sourcing, either browsing through online auctions or going to a thrift shop. You know, I have a couple of thrift shops that are real close to the post office, so I'll stop by those. But,
Convenient.
but I mean, I really do the thrift shops more for just because I enjoy doing it. I mean,
Right,
I know being full time with the type of stuff I sell, there's absolutely no way I could get enough stuff to make a living just going to yard sales, thrift
right.
shops, and estate sales. So much of my stuff comes from relationships now that I've built over the many years that I've been doing this. So,
No, amazing. That's a great overview into your daily agenda. It's interesting because you're able to successfully do so many things, saving time. And it looks it looks great. I've seen your stores, I've seen your listings, and it's incredible. Congrats, Stuart. Now, question: how does this perfectly fit into your daily workflow?
well, it's really the kind of the centralized repository for all my online inventory. I don't try to track my
Uh-huh.
like booth inventory through this perfectly. That's all done through my spreadsheet that I use. Um, so, in addition to being the tool that helps manage my cross listing process, it's really nice just to have that centralized repository of all the inventory. So if you ever lose any one marketplace, I know there have been times eBay's lost everybody's stuff at
Oh,
various times throughout the years. So
images,
um,
listings, item descriptions. It happened. We love eBay, but it happened.
and so really between eBay and List Perfectly, that's really two places that I have. Like I list everything on eBay, and then the other platforms get some subset of the stuff that goes on eBay. So between eBay and List Perfectly, like if either one were to ever, go away for whatever reason, and I'm hope List Perfectly never goes away because I don't know what I do, but uh, yeah, just as far as a tool, I mean, going back to when I started with List Perfectly in 2020, I don't really know that I ever could have gone full time without List Perfectly to manage the cross listing process. And I mean, I'll just tell anybody who's thinking about going full time. I mean, you absolutely almost you need to be cross listing. Um,
Yep.
and List Perfectly, in my opinion, is the best tool, but use some tool. I mean, there's many tools out there, and find one that works for you. And if you decide to use List Perfectly, you can use code FHV for 30% off your first month. So, um, but yeah, I like List Perfectly because, I mean, and just for those who don't know, I mean, it's also got the Poshmark sharing tools built in because I used to pay for one of the Poshmark tools before List
Yeah,
Perfectly had it. So, that was a expense I could take off my books
right.
once List Perfectly started doing that. And then for if you don't have another tool that you're using to manage your revenue and cost of goods sold and everything, List Perfectly does have that built in. But yeah, there's a lot of value adds that List Perfectly has outside just the cross listing. That's, I would consider that the core of List Perfectly is the cross listing, but there's definitely a lot more benefits than just that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Stuart. I really appreciate it. And what about any recent LP feature that we created that maybe you find it very useful for your business?
Well, I mentioned the Poshmark stuff
Oh.
for sure. Um, the well, the AI stuff, I do use that. I,
Listing
I
assistant.
but yeah, the AI that's built into it does a really good job with the listing descriptions and listing titles and things of that nature. Um, Trying to
Oh,
think what else has been released recently, but
oh.
it's I mean, it's just so ingrained in my business that I mean, I definitely could not be where I am today without List Perfectly. So,
Oh, thank you, Stu. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And so let's go back to you now, okay? So I want to talk about staying connected with you and the different projects you had. For example, what made you start the Finder Flippers Reseller podcast?
well, really, I can't take much credit for starting it. One of my co-hosts, Wes, the Slim Flipper, he had been doing, like, he has a channel called the Slim Flippers where he does interviews, and he had happened to interview me about my reselling journey. And then our other co-host, Johnny, aka Frizzy's Finds. Actually, his wife is Frizzy's Finds, but he
Right.
also resells. And he had interviewed Lizzie and Johnny for his show as well. And then he started thinking about doing a podcast, and he just approached Johnny and I and asked if we'd like to co-host. And we were like, absolutely. And and we have a good time. We record a new episode every week, and you know, who knows? Maybe one day we'll get monetized, but that's not why we do it. We do it just because we enjoy getting together and talking about reselling. And
Right.
um, but we're up to, I think, about 339 subscribers now. So we'll be doing another live show once we hit 400 subscribers. So yeah, go out there and subscribe to the channel, and we'll do another live with giveaways and lots of special guests. And our podcast is kind of a combination of some episodes it'll just be the three of us sitting around chatting, and then we'll have special guests every couple of episodes usually,
Right.
and talk about just reselling from their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing about podcasts, the exchanging ideas and processes and thoughts and chatting. It's a much different venue than doing these sessions, video sessions. Now, question, I'm curious. So what's the difference? What would you say is the difference between the podcast and I see that you have a YouTube channel? Are you actively working on your YouTube channel as well?
I have started putting shorts on there again. So I
Nice.
had the YouTube channel a long time ago and thought, maybe I'll start doing YouTube. And then, in my opinion, anyway, it's hard to be a full time reseller and a full time YouTuber. I
Yeah,
think and I know there's probably people who do both very successfully, but from
right.
what I've seen, the people who are really, really big YouTubers, they do enough reselling to support their channel, but they're making most of their money from YouTube. And then,
Yep.
then you have resellers who are making some YouTube videos, but they're making most of their money from resellers. So
Reselling. Mhm.
reselling. So I started out making a few videos, and then I really didn't do anything with the channel that I have, the Franklin Hill Ventures channel, for probably a couple of years. But here lately, I've had a goal to do one short every day
Right.
and upload it to Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So
Right.
I have started to trying to get more, and a lot of it's just because I enjoy doing it.
Right.
Maybe it'll help grow the business a little bit. I don't know. Um, so really, the stuff on my channel is more, what I found, what I sold, those kind of things. Where the Finders Flippers just more, just for lack of a better term, talking heads type of channel. We're not doing now. Wes and I both, and Johnny will upload some shorts to the channel, like if we're out thrifting, but for the most part, it's just us talking. Yeah. So, yeah, that's where that one in the middle there, that's where I saw Wes, and that's Wes, one of my podcast partners there in that
Oh,
middle one
okay.
up top. So, yeah. And I happened
There
to run
he
into him at the thrift shop. So, um, he's like 6'8". So if you ever see Wes out, you definitely, will notice him. So,
Oh yeah, he looks very tall indeed, Stuart. That's a good shot. That I like it. That's a good one. That's I tried. I showed your different channels, so I wanted to share a little where the people, our audience, can reach you out of the. But I also saw that you have a Facebook group, Stuart. I'm sorry, a Facebook page.
yeah. And it's probably similar to my Instagram
Uh
um,
huh.
page. I mean,
Okay.
I mainly do just pictures, and then I'll do promotions for the podcast and promotions for my antique mall and things like that on the Facebook page. But yeah, I end up, yeah, so there I was at my grandson's first birthday this weekend. And, and I always try to keep a combination of a little bit of personal stuff, but mostly business, I think the personal stuff helps bring a face to your reselling business. So,
Absolutely. People want to see what's going on behind the scenes. I just want to say, okay, to everybody, are you still doing these incredible pickles, Stuart?
we are. In fact, that's just a picture from the other day. We just restocked the shelves, and yeah, I think I sent you some of the beets, wasn't it?
My favorite, Stuart. That was epic, epic, amazing. Thank you. Thank you. That was very kind of you, Stuart. I can vouch for the high quality. Incredible. Go figure. When you told me you were making it, it's like, okay, yes. And again, it's just incredible how many projects. I'm glad that I showed that because that's another project you're having.
Yeah, and just for full disclosure, I mean, Amy and I do not make those. We have them made for us by in the Amish country, so
Oh,
they're
nice.
they're probably a whole lot better than if Amy and I tried to make them in the kitchen. But we have a little bit of everything from salsas to pickles to preserves, and I mean, we've done very well. We've been doing that now for a couple of years, and it kind of goes. And my goal is to try to find a new revenue stream every year of some sort. In the whole kind of name of diversification, and make sure that if one thing ever dries up, I've still got plenty of other revenue streams coming in. So that was my new revenue stream from however many years ago it was. And it's something that our original intent was we were going to just do festivals with
Right.
it, but then we ended up selling them out of the antique malls, and they do very well. So
Nice. Nice. That's thank you for sharing that. Now, what would you say? Do you have a message or feedback do you get from resellers who listen? What kind of message or feedback do you get from
I'm about
resellers?
people who listen to the podcast, or I
Yeah,
guess visit my page, or just all of the above.
all of the above.
Yeah, I mean, the I've made so many
Mm.
so many new friends and stuff just through all the different like social outlets that I have in reselling, whether it be the podcast or whether it be um, going to meetups, or in person type events,
Right.
or through my Facebook page. I know specifically through the Instagram and Facebook pages, it's
Yeah.
helped generate new business, especially on the Franklin Hill Farm stuff.
Yeah.
I'll have people reach out. Hey, I happened to get your beats when I was in town in Knoxville last year, and I'm here. Can you send them to me in this state? And I'm like, absolutely. Um, but the number of things, just comments we get on the videos, either things we didn't know, or somebody saying they didn't know that and they learned it from us. So it's a two-way street, definitely. I'm constantly learning things from other resellers, um, and not just resellers. I mean, people I buy stuff from and people who come in the antique malls. If you're not learning something new every day, you're definitely,
Yeah.
getting stagnant and not growing. So,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about that, now not growing and that, let's talk about transparency and takeaways. What do you think are the biggest challenges you face as a reseller?
well, and definitely in what the type of stuff I sell, my number one biggest challenge is sourcing. Because
Oh,
I don't sell any replenishables other than my Franklin Hill Farms products. I mean, that's something I can go get more anytime I run out. Most
okay.
everything else I sell is a one off. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's really no way I could source enough stuff just going to yard sales, estate sales, online auctions, and thrift shops to be able to consistently, know that I'm going to have enough revenue coming in to be able to do this full time. So,
Right.
and I think I also mentioned earlier, I mean, one of the number one most important things in reselling, it's probably true in anything you do in life, is relationships. So, you know, I I mean, I have business cards and I never shy away from the fact I'm a reseller either. Like if I go to yard sales, I hand my card out to pretty much every yard sale I go to. Do you have any vinyl records? Do you have, um, old photos, anything made of paper? Here's my card. If you know of anybody does, because, I'll hear so many people at thrift shops and at yard sales, and
Yeah.
somebody will ask them, "Oh, are you buying that to resell?" "Oh no, I'm buying this for my uncle's brother." I mean, you're a 58-year-old man buying certain things. I mean, it's pretty obvious you're going to resell it, But
Right.
um, so I never shy away from that. I mean, and at thrift shops, in fact, the one thrift shop I go to now, I mean, they all know me my name. Um, and I get to know all the employees by name, and that goes a long way towards hey, we just put something out you may like, or hey, when we put shirts out, we always put the new ones, here. Um, so those kind of things can help. Um, but through those relationships I've made in handing out my business cards, whether it's people coming into the antique mall or at yard sales or thrift shops, I
Yeah.
usually get at least one or two calls a week now from
Wow.
somebody who, their grandmother died or their parents are moving or this, and I want to come look at
Right.
stuff. So it's like having your own private, pick at in an estate sale, basically. So that's really how I can get enough volume to be able to do this full time because it's hard. I can't go
Mm.
order new pallets. I can't go, order 10,000 of these off Temu or wherever people get their stuff from. So, I've constantly got to be having new stuff come in, and
Right.
99% of what I sell is just one off. Once it's
Yep.
gone, it's gone. I can't go get another one. So,
No, amazing. No, that makes sense. Selling one of a kind is it's not easy, but it seems that you have a very good strategy and a process, not only for shipping, sourcing. What an incredible session. You have taken us through such an incredible journey through your reselling process and everything you're accomplishing. I'm curious, can you share with us? I think you told me this in person, Franklin Hill Ventures. You're Stewart White, and I think that was related to a street or something. Remind me of that, Stuart. I'm curious.
yeah, you're close. So when we first moved to Knoxville, or back to Knoxville because I grew up here,
Yeah.
when we first moved back here 18 years ago, and we were uploading pictures, mainly kid pictures, to Facebook, you know
Uh-huh.
how Facebook will like geo tag your
Yep.
photos with the location automatically. And it was always putting Franklin Hill. And even though
Ah,
I grew up in Knoxville, I'd never heard of Franklin Hill, had no idea where it was. And finally, after a little research, we figured out that it's actually an area of Knoxville, or a little, I guess, a neighborhood, for lack of a better term, that's on the other side of the interstate from us. So I'm not sure
right.
why it tagged us as Franklin Hill, but we
Yeah.
liked the name. And when we were starting the business in 2014 and looking to, for a business name, we just like Franklin Hill and Tide Ventures on the end, and kind of the went from there. So, but a lot of people do think my name is Franklin.
I
Um,
know. I heard that one. So that's why I wanted to ask this. I'm throwing you a little off script because they're gonna be like, "Is that Franklin Stewart?" No, it's Stewart White. Creator of Franklin Hill Ventures.
yeah, it's
Oh,
funny. That was my online name for a while, and especially I always joke with the Primetime Treasure Hunter Dom, who has a YouTube channel.
yeah.
I would be active on his YouTube shows and stuff, and he would always call me Franklin. And then eventually he figured out my name was Stewart, but now he jokingly always he'll give me shout outs in his video occasionally, to Franklin, or he'll find the Franklin character from Sesame Street and say, "This is for Franklin." I mean Stewart, and so yeah, definitely a lot of people think my name is Franklin who see me online.
Oh, that's funny. That cracks me up. Oh my goodness. So let's go to, a final takeaway. What is your favorite piece of advice for our audience? What would you say is your favorite piece of advice?
I mean, I think we've already covered it. I mean, just regardless of whether you're part time or full time, I mean, start building those relationships, that are
Okay.
going to help you succeed in business, whether it's relationships to learn from people or whether it's relationships to get stuff from people. I
Right.
mean, you're not going to be successful without forming those relationships. And it especially becomes important, if you're going to try to go full time.
Right.
And especially if you're selling antique and vintage like me, because there's just not an outlet you can go to. Like if you're a pallet seller, a liquidation
Right.
seller of some sort, you can't go buy, a pallet of antiques. Well, you probably can somewhere, but I haven't
Yeah.
found that place yet. And uh, so, um, so yeah, that's probably relationships, and then if you're gonna go full time,
Hmm.
I mean, I guess don't be scared to go full time, but also on the flip side of that, I
Yeah.
don't think it's a decision you can take lightly and just one day wake up and say, I'm going to go full time. Now, definitely have a plan if you're going to go full time.
Well said, Stuart. Well said. That's amazing advice. And I really want to say thank you for taking the time to be with us here today in this perfectly channel. I'm gonna invite you, beautiful audience, to subscribe and follow Stuart. I show you all the social media venues he's in. And please, if you have any comments, feel free to comment on the video. And thank you so much, Stuart.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.